Hi, my name's Richard.
I'm Rachel.
Welcome to Aspirations Dance video lessons. While the techniques that we're going to discuss in these videos will work for any level of dancer, we are going to be primarily looking at the casual dancer, the kind of person who isn't really interested in the pressures of competition work, but just really wants to get onto the dance floor and experience the fun and enjoyment of partner dancing. So let's get things started. Okay, so let's take a look at our very base work. So as we get into hold here, one of the things that we're looking at is trying to eliminate the memory work in dancing. So the first step that we're going to be taking is going to be determined by the direction that we're going in. So for the purposes of this video, I'm going to be moving in this direction, which tells me I need to use a forward step to go that way. We're using logic to create our dance work. From Rachel's perspective, if she's doing good connection work, as discussed in our hold and connection video, then she's going to feel that interaction, and that's what's going to move her backwards rather than Rachel having to remember to move backwards. So if we take that very first step, first of all, we establish our starting foot. So we'll use left foot for the leads, right for the follows. So I recommend lifting the heel of that foot up slightly off the floor whilst keeping the toe in contact. Now that's ready to go, and we're going to take our very first step in the direction that we want to go in, and step. So again, we see a good transfer of weight there, and when we put that good transfer of weight into position, that frees up the other foot. That's now the foot that's ready to go. Now all we need to know is what's the next direction. It could be a forward step, of course, but in reality, in the early stages, we want to try and avoid feet as much as possible. So we're going to explore the side step here. So we're going to use the foot that's ready to go, because if all the weight is on one foot, there is only one foot ready to go, as discussed in our transfer of weight video. So now from this position, we're going to move to the side and side. Again, good transfer of weight. Later on we'll look at kind of rise and fall and sways and all that wonderful stuff, but for now in the early part we're just going to focus on transfer of weight in position, and then finally we're going to take the foot that's ready to go and we're going to close it to the other foot and close. And what you see there is we have lifted the heel of the other foot up as we've closed in to make sure we now don't have to try to think which foot to use. What we often find in the early stages is that in the closing step people will close and put their weight equally on both feet, and now the brain has to get involved. Then which foot should I use? Again, that comes back to our transfer of weight video. So we'll see that in action again. So we'll move back a little bit here. So we'll have one step in the direction we're going, a step to the side and close our feet. One, side, closed. And that pretty much creates the formula to develop a bass waltz work or 3-beat work around the floor. So one step for each beat. We've got 3 steps there, and that will give us a bass straight line waltz, because if we were to then apply that with the foot that was ready to go, we would create the next step. So you can see now as we do this that that's happening. So we do one step in the direction we're going, one to the side, close and transfer. If we repeat that formula, one step in the direction we're going, one to the side, close our feet. Rinse and repeat, and we've got ourselves a little basic waltz. And we'll show you that, and we'll move back a little bit further here, and you can see we'll just apply that same formula repeatedly. So one step in the direction we're going, to the side, close, one step, and each time we're using a different foot because we're transferring our weight each time. So we'll go step, side, closed, step, side, closed, step, side, closed, step, side, closed. And we'll come back in the other direction now as well, so you can see that from the different side. So we would have step, side, closed, step, side, closed, step, side, closed, step, side, closed. Okay, so do that around the room in an anti-clockwise direction and you will be dancing a little basic waltz. Now, as we look at some of the kind of deeper techniques within that, and we're not going to go in too deep on these right now because we're still only in that very base foundation work. But when we look at what the framework does for us, again, we're going to look at the application of the side step from the point of view of the frame working. So when we take that first step here, one of the things that often happens now is once you've done it a few times, is the follow thinks, well, I've got to step to the side now. So they take themselves off to the side, and once we get a disconnect, you can see what's going to happen. So follows, what you're looking for here is you're looking for the interaction with your partner's framework to develop and build the next step for you. So when we take that step and we transfer weight, now when I move to the side, I take Rachel with me. So if we're taking a small step, Rachel takes a small step. If I take a big step, Rachel takes a big step, because we're working together. And that really is the key to get real great success on the dance floor, is that interaction, working together. Really, we only have two objectives that we want to achieve on the dance floor, and that is work together as a team, but more importantly, have fun together while the music's playing. Now, it's very easy to fall into the traps of rights and wrongs. You know, that's how we're raised as humans these days. Everything's black and white, right and wrong. And you don't really have grey areas within that. But we're in the arts now, and you've got to be aware that there are moments in your dancing where things aren't going to work out well. Now, rather than getting frustrated at yourself or your partner, because when that happens, it turns into what's technically known as a row, which we don't want. So when you fall into that trap of worrying about it too much, that's really when you can feel some of the pressures and the stresses of dancing. So we don't want to spend too much time worrying about the rights and wrongs. If you feel something isn't working, then go back to the foundations, look at the transfer of weight, look at the framework, what's happening there. And as I say, in this particular one in the early stages, we can often find it's the closing step that causes the most problems. What we're going to do now is we're going to take a look at the application of turning steps in our 3-beat and how that's going to work. Now, when we look at dancing really in terms of what's happening, we have a very binary system, straight or turn. I mean, that's pretty much it, especially at the very early stages. Again, exceptions, we'll talk about those when they arise, but we can really break it down to, am I going straight or am I turning? So when we want to apply turns in any of our ballroom dancing, really what we need to know is which step is going to be the turning step. So again, we can take a lot of the memory work out if we work this way. So from a lead's perspective, you don't have to try to remember every single step. Once we're starting to build up some of the formulas and the concepts, we just need to know when to apply them. So if we look at that binary system, we can see how that would work. Okay, so now we're going to look at the application of the turn concept that we talked about in the previous video. Now, if you haven't watched that video yet, go back and look at that, because I'll be moving through this very quickly, so some of it might not make sense if you haven't looked at the concept of the turn. So starting off, we're going to create a straight step. Doesn't always have to be, of course, this could be a turning step, but for the purposes of this now, we're going to start off with the straight so we can look at what's happening. So as I move forwards, again, we're going to get our starting foot, left foot for the leads, right for the follows, and we're going to go into a straight side closed. Now at this point, we're going to note that if I've created a straight step, the body hasn't changed its position. So I'm still facing in exactly the same position that I started. Now here I have two choices. I can keep going straight, of course, as we discussed earlier in the video, or I can apply my turning step. So what we're going to do now is we're going to apply a turning step into this step here. As I take the concept of the turn, I move that foot forwards, turning into the turn, and again I'm going to just use the step side closed, and we go turn side closed. And now we've created the turn. And again, with good transfer of weight, we get ourselves into a situation where we don't need to remember which foot is ready to go. If that has worked well, leads, your left foot would be ready to go right now, follows your right foot would be ready to go. So that's on this side over here. So that's the side that would be ready to go right now, following the rules. And then we have choices again. Do I go straight or do I go into a turning step? And we're going to explore both of those concepts. Initially, we're going to look at what would happen if I went straight. So if we look at the logic of dancing, I still want to go in this direction. So that tells me I have to now move into a backward step. Because if I move forwards, I'm going the wrong way. down the dance floor, which of course is going to cause problems for everybody else on the dance floor. So developing good floor craft is really important. That understanding that we've got to keep moving in the direction that we're going. So here I go into my straight step, of course activating a backward step because logic tells me I have to, and straight, side, closed. And once again, you see, I haven't changed position. The body position remains exactly the same. I'm still heading out and facing towards camera at this point. So you can see that I've used all the concepts of a straight step. I haven't changed that body position. So now using the foot that's ready to go, which happens to be my right foot, Rachel's left foot, again telling you that for reference rather than memory, because if I've transferred weight well, it has to be that foot. And now I'm going to activate a turning step. So as that foot moves backwards, I'm going to push it and turn it out away from me, activating the body turn, and now I create a turn, side, closed. And here I end up back in my original starting position, and I've created some basic turn work. So now we're going to put all of that together without stopping so you can see it in action. So you'll see I'll create one straight, one turn, and then I'll repeat that, one straight, one turn. And now that gives us a little basic turn that goes straight, side, closed, turn, side, closed, straight, side, closed, turn, side, closed. And again, if we repeated that around the dance floor, we would get ourselves into a situation where we got this nice little gentle turn. It's our first little exploration of the turn information in the waltz. Rachel, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, from a follow perspective, it's making sure that you don't anticipate the turn when it's coming and the angle of the turn as well, how much your lead is going to move you into the turn. So you don't want to pull away from partner, as Richard mentioned previously. You want to stay connected with them, make sure you've got your frame locked in position so your lead can move you through the turn. All we want to be focusing on is weight transfer, transferring the weight from one foot to the next and allow the lead to do the rest.
So there are many things going on with the turn step, and we'll talk about some of those things now as we start to develop full rotations in our waltz or in our 3-beat work. So when we get to any point in the dance, as we've discussed, we can apply a turning step at any point. So what we're going to look at now is what would happen if we created one straight into a turn, as we were doing before, but then instead of going straight after that, apply another turn. So now it's going to go straight, turn, turn. So this is how that would look. So what we would get is a straight, side, close, turn, side, close, turn, side, closed. Okay, and that's going to give us our development of our full rotations in our waltz. Now, one of the things to really look at is what happens with rotational momentum. So as we're developing and building our dance, we're going to layer information on top of information. So rather than giving you everything all in one go, you're going to find we'll feed in information across the different dances. So even if you're not particularly interested in learning how to dance a foxtrot or a quick step, take a look at those videos for the development of some of the techniques that will still feed back into it. And even going into some of the swing dancing or the tango or the Latin work, there's still stuff that's incredibly relevant across all of the dances that we do. So as we're discussing these things, we'll talk about different information that might be pulled from different videos, so you can go and check those out. So rotational momentum. So what's happening in rotational momentum is I'm looking at when I start a turn, and we'll go straight into the turn from here, from this side closest to camera. So as I go into this turn, one of the early errors that can be made is, as you're developing the turn, is create the turning step, but then completing the turn without any extra work. Now you can see my position is facing here, whereas if I wanted to keep moving in this direction, the only thing I'm left with now is, well, basically going side, close, which is fun. Yeah, I'm not saying not to do that. If that's how you want to dance, then you go ahead. It's your dance, of course. So when we look at how rotational momentum works, once I create the turn, I just follow into the momentum. Now, we can stop the momentum, of course we can. So later down the line, you'll have choices where you will decide not to complete the rotational momentum. But very early on, we will follow into the rotational momentum, and that gives us our positioning. So what you see here as we turn is we go turn. It keeps turning as we do our side close, and that's what gives us our position when we do that. So I'll just do that without Rachel so you can see what I'm talking about here. So my position is here, and as I turn, the rotational momentum has started. Now, as I talked about earlier, if I were to stop that now, I would end up here. So if that was my objective, that's how I would do it. I would stop the momentum. However, if I keep the momentum going all the way around, we end up with a completed turn or completion of that part of the turn, which now means I've got my natural movement in the direction that I want to go in without having to make adjustments to make that happen. So when we see that rotational momentum in action, again, it eliminates a lot of the work of the turn if I follow things all the way around and follow things all the way around to its completion. And you can see I get the nice angles towards the direction that I want to go in. So that's how we would create full rotations. Again, to be clear, they can be applied at any time, but if you wanted to create what's known as the base natural and reverse turns in the waltz, then all you would have to do is remember to dance one straight followed by 2 turns. Okay, so that's your only real memory test. Transfer of weight takes care of which foot does the work. Understanding of the turn develops that. So we'll show you that. We'll show you how that will work, because it won't turn the same way on the second turn because we'll be starting on the other foot. So what we would see is we would have a straight side, close, turn, side, close, turn, side, close. Straight, side, close, turn, side, close, turn, side, close. Okay, so we see that creates that wonderful moment, the waltz, which rotates and turns all the way around the room. And then if you apply that continuously, you'll get it turning one way then the next. Now, to be clear, we don't need to remove the early information when we're dancing. So if you are starting work into the turns and you find that you apply a turn and then as you're dancing around the floor you realise it's not working out so well, you can revert back. And quite often when we're having a little dance around, especially late at the end of the evening when we're a little bit tired, we'll find that we might apply a little turn here, complete the turn, and then think, we'll go back and have a nice little gentle straight basic waltz, and then activate turns again just into our dance. So we don't have to really be too concerned about keeping to a routine. In fact, I always recommend to avoid routine-based work if you can, because once memory gets involved, all sorts of things can of course go wrong, and we go back to what we've talked about before, that when we stop interacting together and we work independently, we lose some of the fun and enjoyment of the dance, and we end up with situations where it feels like it's a fight, and that often leads to the rows and arguments, which we never have. Okay, so when we look at that information in full, again, to clarify, the turn can happen at any point. So I could even start off with the turning step, for example. So rather than going straight, turn, turn, I can do anything I like. So once we develop and build to this, you can apply the turn at any point. So as a lead, you'll decide when you feel like you want to turn. So here I am starting off with our original starting foot. So my left foot's ready to go. And now I'm going to activate a turn straight away. So I'll go turn, side, close, turn. There's another turn, side, close. So now I could create that if I wanted to, and I could go into straights or turns. So there's nothing stopping me doing multiple turns if I wanted to do that. So again, I could do a turn, side, close, turn, side, close, turn, side, close, turn, side, closed. And now we're starting to look into the development of things like the Viennese waltz with all the fun things that come with that. have a go with the turns. Again, don't worry about whether you're right or wrong. Just have a go at it, see what happens, see what the outcome is. As long as we're transferring weight, we're going to limit that moment where we potentially step on each other's feet, which of course we want to avoid always. It does happen, so when it does happen, just remember follows. We were never trying to do that. And Leeds, if it does happen, don't just go, oh well, here I am, stop the dance, reset, start again, and apologise to your follow, even if you don't think it was your fault. Okay, so go out there, enjoy it, try your turns, have fun on the dance floor while the music's playing. Thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed that. Do all the usual stuff. Give us feedback, like, subscribe, call us in the wee small hours with all your problems. And, if it's important to you, it's important to us. We just want to make sure you're having a great time out there on the dance floor.